So in our next lecture on Islam, we're going to look at the architecture of Islam and the importance of calligraphy. In North Africa, one of the largest, most impressive, and the oldest mosque in the Islamic world is in the great mosque of Calligraphy in Tunisia. It was founded by the general Uqba in Nafi in 670 CE, in about the year 50 according to the Islamic calendar, which sets as its day zero as the conquering of Mecca by Muhammad. The founding of the city of Kairouan is impressive as one of the largest Islamic monuments in North Africa. Its perimeter is about 1,323 feet. So when you look at a mosque, the mosque is a structure for worship that is sort of roughly based upon the original home of Muhammad, who had a courtyard and a place where someone would call people to prayer, a tower that became this minaret. And you see the minaret at the far end here in the upper right side of this picture. And on the other end of this is interior space, of a colonnaded interior space, which wall is in the direction of Mecca. And this was done originally through just dead reckoning. Today, mosques use much more sophisticated calculations, taking into account the curvature of the earth. The minaret is probably one of the most striking aspects of a mosque, as it is one where the indigenous architectural elements of the region kind of come into play in the design. Everything else is Spartan and functional and in a very pragmatic way, but the minaret allows for a certain kind of grandeur and artistry to emerge. And you can see in this design not only some of the regional architectural touches, but also some Roman influences in the colonnade below. You also notice in the colonnade from the 9th century these high vaulting arches. This is a feature of Islamic architecture that became very important in Europe with the Renaissance, when you have that tall columns, narrow columns, and that colonnade would be a feature that would be copied. And so this becomes a sort of standard for a lot of the mosques in North Africa and elsewhere in Africa, as it becomes a kind of model to which they all aspire. Now we'll move further south and west in Africa to the interior kingdom of Mali. And there we see another very ancient mosque that has been rebuilt and rebuilt every year. This is in the city of Djenné, which you can see here along the river Niger, sort of between Mopti and Sédhiou. Djenné Mosque is an extraordinary building because it's constructed out of traditional architectural methods, which tend to be 1 or 2 stories at most. And here we have a 3 to 4 story construction, with this extraordinary vaulted walls and ceilings. And it has this incredible majesty in the center of the town. Originally built in 1907, it has been perennially rebuilt and refashioned because of the nature of this adobe architecture, this sort of mud construction that they use. The heavy torrential rains that they get in this area often wash away the building if it were not tended to annually. So we can see from the outside this kind of bristling surface. These are the torron. They are literally scaffolding, and which people use to climb up the exterior of the building and apply new mud to the exterior of the building. The whole community comes together for this celebration. This is a point where everyone kind of comes together and helps rebuild the mosque. It's a big sort of community construction. Over the years, they say the design of the building has subtly shifted with the additional ongoing changes. The curves and the designs have become softer, more round, and it is giving it a kind of gentler and more handmade kind of construction. Also, in the Islamic world, from the very beginning, writing and being able to write down Muhammad's words was a very important part of the practice of Islam, as these teachings of Muhammad needed to be preserved and passed down to future generations. And so we can see here an early 8th century Quran where the calligraphy is rather plain. And then a 14th century Quran where every letter is embossed with gold and delicate filigree. We can see the expansion and elaboration in letter forms and intricate interlocking characters as a way of kind of enhancing the beauty of the book. Books have a deep philosophical tradition in Islam. The idea that books are sacred follows from this idea that these well-preserved tablets, Lawh of Mahfuz, which is this idea that God has this great book which in everything is written. And this is sort of a kind of touchstone idea that the book contains all possible wisdom. Beautiful lettering and calligraphy is a way of revealing the inherent beauty of the words of God, the words that have inspired people for so many generations. And it's the beauty of the writing that is the tongue of the hand and the elegance of thought. Draw all these ideas together through the sense of the beauty inherent in the words. People practice writing at the mosque. Writing is a very important part of learning the ways of being Muslim. The people of Islam had great advantage early on because it spread literacy throughout Africa and brought literacy to many parts of North Africa that had no system of writing before. And so it kind of brought with it a kind of expansion and a deliberation on a lot of and communication of ideas that heretofore had not been written down. So the Lawh is the prayer board, and on this a teacher will write down a passage in Arabic from the Quran, and the student using a stick will first simply practice the movements following the design on the board with their own fingers without actually using any ink. They would just sort of practice moving their hands as if they were writing. Over the years, different inscriptions get kind of stained and stuck into the board, and that's when you look at it closely, you'll see layer upon layer of old teachings. There are many different kinds of ornamental calligraphy. There are 5 major kinds. One of the most basic forms where all the lettering is relatively similar width is called Kufi, or sometimes Kufic writing. And that was one of the original forms of writing. And as writing became, more expressive and more elaborate, many other different kinds of writing emerged. And as writing, the artistry of writing continued, people discuss good writing as having this spirit essence, this idea of baraka. Baraka literally translates as the word for blessing. And to come into contact with good calligraphy is, in a sense, to be blessed by it. And that blessing then passes on to anybody who comes into contact with that thing. The word baraka has deep roots in Africa and has been used and employed in lots of different ways of talking about this kind of magical power an object might have and communicate the power of an object in that way. It's a kind of blessing, and this is a way in which it's understood in the Islamic world. This image here is called a Hilye Serif, dated from 1870. This is a fairly old piece of calligraphy, which was writing down a passage from the Hadith, wherein it describes the appearance and manners of Muhammad himself. And this, for someone in a Muslim household, would be a very acceptable way of, in essence, having a portrait of Muhammad, not trying to represent him in pictorial form, but writing down how he was described by people who knew him during his lifetime. Calligraphy is put onto all kinds of objects as a way of applying a kind of decoration, but also imbuing an object with a sense of blessing, a blessed power. Here, a glass lamp from Mamluk Syria or Egypt in the mid-14th century. On the exterior of this glass lamp are passages from the Quran that refer to God's divine light. It says, God is the light of the heavens and of the earth. And this passage is, sort of beautifully, ornamentally, sort of wrapping around this form in this beautiful decorative way. And so that the light that this lamp gives off is further blessed by these words, so that anyone who should come underneath this light would receive that blessing. And this is a part of this idea of baraka, why they put calligraphy on objects, so that it has that connection to the Word of God.